Okay. Greetings, hello. My name is Kayla. And I've never really done like an introduction of sorts or shared anything about my quote unquote story. Which, can I be honest, when as I'm saying that right now, there's a voice in my head that's like, yeah, because no one gives a shit about your story. But also like, that's not true because people have specifically asked. So jot that down. But also, eh, it feels to me like I just want to share, sure, my story, but talk about my experiences as someone who, for lack of a better term, the terminology is kind of annoying to me. But also, is that true? I don't know if it is true. I'm someone who went from having like a normal job, living in New York, working a normal job, to now channeling higher dimensions, working in like under the ocean with technology, doing weird frequency, sound, light code shit, talking to aliens. Kind of a stark contrast. The reason I want to talk about my experience or my story is because, number one, just because they're my experiences, is because I can. And I think we should all be sharing our experiences regardless of what arena they're within. I think that's a cool part of being human, is getting to know one another's viewpoints and being able to see through other people's lenses to relate and understand and just, I don't know, share with one another. And so that's what I'm going to do. And I don't know how detailed I'll accidentally make this. But if it starts to go on, I'll just do a part 2. And so people have asked for, quote unquote, people that are in the space have asked for like my story or how I started doing this stuff. So I'm just sharing my freaking experience. Kayla, it's okay. I love you so much. Hey. January 2024. I think that is where I'll start. I guess I'll start by saying I've always kind of been I was always cynically into like new age type stuff. Like I kind of liked the idea of tarot when I was after college. I was be in astrology and stuff like that, but I would also kind of act like I wasn't. Like I needed to be too cool for school about it, and I didn't want to be wrong about any of it or be made to feel stupid, but I was like, oh, this is 100% fucking real. Like, and I would go down deep dives around like numerology. I would even more just like psychology, understanding the self, which I think is how a lot of people first start getting into this type of stuff. I would go into deep dives in that, or anything that would sort of like identify me in some way, like the Enneagram or any of those like personality things. Any of that type of stuff, I'd get my hooks in and I'd become obsessed for a little while. And then I'd move on to the next thing. But at its core, actually, can I also say that when I graduated college, I remember I was in an apartment, Indianapolis, Broad Ripple. Broad Ripple is burning. They lived behind me later on. Who is that? Is that Margot in the Nuclear So-and-Sos? Maybe. Anyway, I'd graduated college. I'm smoking a blunt. I'm smoking a doobie. And I am on the phone with my stepdad. And I'm like, Kevin, what the fuck is this? Actually, what are we doing here? This is a goddamn joke. And so, while yes, that was always kind of in me, I think this is right now what other people are like. And I'm not here to try to convince anyone of anything. I'm only sharing my experiences. But when it comes, like, the fundamental part of me, like, when I'm sharing with people that maybe don't, like, think in this way or don't think about these things, that's the first thing for me that got me thinking and got me being like, Actually, what the fuck are we doing here? Because this is a goddamn nightmare." And I know I looked at, this is so annoying. I looked at 11:11, but I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. We're all just working away like little slaves, like chugging along, doing what we're supposed to do, only to make enough. I don't need to, everyone knows what I'm talking about. Society is not great. And so I think there had been a really slow burn of at least recognizing that, and then learning lessons that I needed to learn until we got to this place of right before January 2024. 6 months before that, I started really having like kind of a soul awakening, I guess I would say, where I was like, I'm not fucking doing this anymore. If one more goddamn person tells me to do something, I swear to God, I'm going to lose my mind. And it was just this like, I will find a way to be free in whatever way that looks like. Like, I will be financially free. I will not have to do a job like this where I'm miserable every single day. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I will not do it. And it was like this real big transition of, I was trying to like find side things that I could do for money. And I just moved to Nashville with my boyfriend at the time, and that year was coming to an end. And I was like, I think I want to end this relationship. I think I want to like go. And one day I went rogue and I just did it. And I booked a place in Italy for a month. And I was like, I'll start doing travel creation, and this will be how I can like be free and just kind of do whatever. Anyway, stuff like that had been going on, like a soul awakening. I'd also kind of gotten into breath work, but it was one of those things where I'd like do it once and then I'd be like, okay. And it was always to just help me maintain a sense of calm, because I was also addicted to stimulants at the time. If my family does watch this, whatever. But I mean, who isn't addicted to stimulants if you take that medicine? That's what it does. Okay. And I'd kind of gotten into meditation a little bit before. So that happens. We get in that time period. I ended that relationship. I had nowhere to live because we decided to leave the apartment I had in Nashville. That's why I went to Italy. I got back to Indiana. Had nowhere to live because I ended my relationship. Didn't know where I wanted to live. And so I went rogue. Booked a space in Portugal for a couple months. Didn't ask my job. I was just like, hey, I'm going to Portugal. This is where I'll be working from. Just FYI. And just started kind of taking control of my life in little ways like that. Even though there were many people that were like, what about this? What about this? What about this? You didn't think about that. I was just like, shut the up, dude. I'm doing my thing. I'm living my life. That's why we're here. And so there was a bit of that occurring, okay? I'm in Portugal in a co-living space for the month of December. It goes great. I'm sort of like, where I thought I'd be doing all this content stuff and like trying to get the travel thing going more. There was a big just like, I was like, I'm trying to listen to my body more and listen to what, and what it's saying is to like stop. Stop forcing things. Stop trying so hard to like get out of your current situation and just like slow down for a second. And so instead of that's what I did for that whole month of December, where I was just exploring Porto and being comfortable in living in community with other people that were awesome from all over the place. And I was kind of working at night, and I was getting into like writing every day, like not automatic writing, just like stream of consciousness writing. And I was reading this one book that kind of talked about, like meditation, and it just kind of talked about things like that. And like, I don't know, talked about angel numbers, things like that I was like, I must have just gotten into it or been open to learning more about it. Anyway, let's go ahead and cut to the second month. So January, I'm in Lisbon now. I'm living by myself. I get locked out of my apartment one morning. I had to stay up all night doing a deployment for work. And I go out to smoke a cigarette at 7 a.m. And I realize I didn't bring the key. So I'm now locked out at 7 a.m. in Lisbon, hadn't slept. I'm walking around and something tells me like, I saw a sign or something for like a psychic. I was like, oh, that might be fun. Like I had seen a psychic once before and I was kind of like skeptical the whole time. But I was like, that might be fun. And so I did a Google search and instead I found a sound bath and something told me book this sound bath. I really don't know why or how it happened. I'd never done a sound bath before, but I was like, I'm gonna do that. And so I go, it's a couple days later, I go. I'm kind of worried about how I will respond to it because I had like, I still do have, but had really, really bad sound sensitivities. Call it misophonia, call it whatever you want. Just really hypersensitive to sounds and nervous system dysregulation, stuff like that kind of went into play with it. So I didn't know how I would respond. But I'm in the sound bath. Halfway through, she had said this thing. She was like, be an active listener to the sounds happening, which is good for a brain like mine. Because my brain, I was like, what am I going to think of? I'm going to need to try to not think about anything, whatever. But I was like, all I have to do is listen. All I have to do is actively listen to the sounds. And when I was actively listening, they were funneling in a way that was like when you set that intention by actively listening, it interacts with your system in a certain way. Anyway, we're already at 18 minutes. Halfway through, can I just be honest with you guys? Did I already say this in the beginning of this? I'm having a little bit of a voice that's like, Kayla, literally, no one cares. But number one, I know that's not true. And number two, I care. And that's enough. So suck on that. Halfway through the sound bath, it was also accompanied by, there was like the owner of the place was like a Reiki person. I didn't know what Reiki was. I hadn't been to it before. I knew it had something to do with energy. But, so she would come around and like kind of do some things. But halfway through, my body just woke up and I was like, and I was moving in specific ways and doing mudras, and my body was like, it was effectively releasing. I know some people would be like, oh, that was a Kundalini awakening. I don't know about that, and I don't know that it matters that much. Here's what it was. It was like the intuitive remembrance of my body moving. Well, here's where it gets tricky though. Okay. From one perspective, it was the intuitive remembrance of my body, like waking up. And it wasn't just like moving through me. It was moving my body in specific positions to release energy. It was, yeah, like I said, the mudras. My hand would move to here and like adjust my jaw and like open my jaw would open, my mouth would open. I was like, what the fuck is going on? I guess the point I'm trying to make, or the picture I'm trying to paint, is that for someone who wasn't in this space, I did not know anything about, like, I'd heard of spirit guides, obviously, but I wasn't in the energy or like the quantum space at all, okay? And so for all of a sudden, my body to be moving on its own when I thought I was just going to a chill little sound bath. And I mean like for 30 minutes, even after, like we were going to town, like we were releasing stuff, we were doing work. And afterwards I asked the Reiki woman, even if she would move, if she was interact when like my energy was bouncing off of her still. So I would still be moving. And it wasn't light language, okay? It was just like intuitive movement, I guess is how I could say it. And it was a reaction to the energy flowing through me, etc. I asked her after, I was like, did you see that? Did you see what was happening? She's like, I did see what was happening. And I was like, well, what the fuck? Was everyone doing that? Is that because you were doing this? She was like, no. And I said, well, more please. And she was just like, it just means like you're ready to receive your mission. And even to this day, if she ever sees this, she was awesome. But again, for me not being, I was like, mission for what? Do you know what I mean? Like that. I didn't really get clear. All I knew is I was observing, and it finally did settle down a little bit. My body stopped moving, and I wasn't scared by it or anything. I was just like, well, that was odd. Went about my day. I came back for a breathwork thing. The same thing happened pretty quickly. This time it was less like intuitive movement, and I was like, something is moving me. My hand is moving. Again, they worked on the jaw because I had really bad TMJ. They would go like back here, move this around, pull, like something was working on me. And like my arms would move back here, stretch, hold it, pull this over here. It was like the best stretching ever because I wasn't doing it. It was just like I was being held up by whatever force this was. And so again, I was just like, all right. I mean, I wasn't scared. I was just like, that's interesting, because there was a third time where I came in, and this time I actually just like a one-on-one Reiki session with her. And this time I'm on the table, like laying on a table. She doesn't like talk in her sessions. It's just in like, my body was doing yoga poses and mudras in the most, like I do mudras in the work now. Like all of my movements are still, to say they're automatic. They are, again, it's sort of like something else is moving through me and my hands move in these positions. I think a lot of people, if you're in their space, stuff like that. But if not, and again, I was in the place of not knowing about this. So I was like, what the fuck is going on? My body is like moving up, and it's doing like, and it's doing like, like, which now I love that happens. But at the time, and it was like, doing these things that I didn't know what they meant. And it just all of a sudden was happening. And in that session, there was like emotion that was released too. Like I was someone who it was quite sensitive, but expressing emotion like was challenging. I remember on that trip calling one of my friends and being like, this, I told him kind of about what happened. And there's more to the story, and we're at 26 minutes. But this Reiki lady, she would ask like, okay, how are you feeling? And I'd be like, good. And she was like, no, how are you feeling? And I was like, I don't know how to answer that question. And so at the same time, while all this kind of like quantum metaphysical stuff was occurring, there was also this extra catalyst within like inner healing, which is what the awakening process is. It's like kind of both of those things. Anyway, after the Reiki session, The one-on-one session, she was like, I remember her thanking her. She was like, well, thank you to Mother Mary and to Archangel Raphael for being here. And I was like, wait a second, because I'm Catholic. So I was like, why are you talking to them? She was like, they're my guides. And I was like, your guides? What? And I asked her if it was safe for me to explore this on my own because it was starting to move when I wasn't with her, and I didn't know if it was like in any way dangerous. She was like, of course you can. She was like, you can always stop it if you want. Which is true, and it's something to note is that even though these movements were happening through me, and half of them did just feel like intuitive remembrances, and half of it did feel like something actually moving through me, we always have a choice. I could have shut it all down. We always have a choice. So I guess I'll just tell this last little bit of this story, and then maybe I'll do more if people find this interesting, or even if people don't find this interesting, if I just feel like sharing more, I will. But the last part of this section of the story is that night I went home, and I swear for that whole week I was just in this state of things had clicked, and I'd recognized that everything had changed, but it was such a subtle shift, like I'd always been what had just transpired, what had just turned on, what had just clicked on. It's like it was just like, oh, this is who I've always been. I guess I'm saying it wasn't a startling whoop. I was just in this perpetual state of observing with curiosity. Anyway, I went home that night, and I was still smoking cigarettes at the time. And I'm smoking a cigarette out the window, and my hands started to move. And I was like, oh, I think this means I should go sit inwardly. And I was like, so I must have guides. She had guides or guardian angels or something, right? So I'm sitting, and I'm like, yes. And they start to adjust my neck to make it straight. They start to adjust my back so it's a straight line. They go out like this. I should start doing this more before I connect. That was really great. But effectively, you're working to connect this area here to be able to receive. And they would just automatically do that for me, or my body would, or however you want to interpret it. And then I was like, yes, is there messaging for me, or what are we doing here? And I felt my arms move to hug myself. And as they moved to hug myself, I felt the deepest sense of love, really. They were kind of at the time, I didn't know it was communication coming in. I didn't know about channeling. I didn't know what that stuff was. I just knew what I was. Sometimes when you don't know about these specific things, it's a lot easier because you just know you're communicating with something. Just like we can universally communicate. If you go to another country, you can find a way to communicate with someone, even if you don't speak the same language. And that's what was happening. It was just, I just knew what they were communicating, and I also could feel what they were communicating, and I trusted it because it wasn't clouded by all of this needing for it to be specific, like the way that I do work now, which is kind of, something to think about for me, I guess. But they were effectively saying all we want for you is to love yourself. Do you give yourself a hug? Do you know that I'd gone through so much change? I'd never really been someone who, I guess kind of hard on myself or whatever. And that was all the message, was just saying we love you, love yourself, And I kept hearing something about like forgiving yourself. And yeah, and I was crying, and it was like a 15-minute thing. And then afterwards I was like, okay, well, thanks to whoever this was, if I have guides, I was like, maybe I have an archangel here. And my head nodded. And I was like, what the fuck? Because that was direct communication. I I still remember, this is so funny. I still remember this. It was, again, I'm just a girl, 29 years old, in Portugal by herself, all of a sudden communicating with something. It's just so funny when you zoom out. Like, what the fuck was going on? And when my head nodded, I was like, okay, wait. Who are the archangels? I was like, Michael. And my head shook no. I asked Raphael. My head shook no. And when I asked Gabriel, my head shook yes. Now, for the rest of the time there, kind of thought that the head nodding thing was usable. Because, as we know, if you know any of the stuff I do, my channeling, it's always been quite physical. I'm like a physical channel. But just like other types of channeling, you can your ego can get in the way of it. So I quickly learned, like, okay, the head nod thing was only viable for that first couple times when I wasn't expecting it, because now I can preemptively think what it's going to say. Anyway, that was still crazy though. And I remember I asked if, yeah, it was just wild. Now, I guess I'll end it there. There's a lot of other, like, now knowing there's a lot of other multidimensional aspects of stuff and other understandings that I've now come into about what was transpiring. And I actually, you know what? I'm going to keep this going, not this time, but I am going to keep sharing my story about, because I do think this is cool. And I do think more and more people are going to start being like, what the is going on? Just like I was. So I'm actually going to pick the story back up next time. And I'm just going to keep going down the line of what transpired. If you did enjoy this, please let me know. Because I can feel a little bit of me being like, as I said, a little bit of me being like, no one cares. Which that's okay if no one does. Okay. Love you a long time. Bye.